Welcome to Historical Repo, where we explore the stories that shaped our world. Today, we're diving into one of the most controversial and significant chapters in economic history, the story of Britain and India, and a figure so staggering it almost defies belief, $45 trillion. This isn't just a number. It's the story of how colonial policies systematically dismantled a thriving economy, redirecting global wealth and setting the stage for the modern world's economic imbalances. Before the arrival of the British, India was an economic powerhouse. For centuries, its share of the world economy was immense, standing at around 23 to 27% in the early 18th century. This was comparable to the entire economy of Europe combined. India was renowned for its high-quality textiles, its spices, and its sophisticated manufacturing, making it a hub of global trade and a land of legendary wealth. The story of the British in India begins not with an invasion by the British Crown, but with a corporation, the East India Company. Initially, this was a trading entity, established to get a foothold in the lucrative spice and textile trades of the East. European traders had to pay for Indian goods with precious metals like gold and silver because Europe had very little that India wanted to buy. This created a massive trade deficit for Britain, a situation they were desperate to reverse. The turning point came in 1757, at the Battle of Plassey. The East India Company, through a mix of military might and political conspiracy, defeated the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj ud Daulah. This victory wasn't just a military one, it was an economic coup. It gave the company control over the vast revenues of Bengal, which was then the richest province in India. This is where the economic drain begins. After 1765, when the company secured the right to collect taxes in Bengal, a fundamental shift occurred. They no longer needed to pay for Indian goods with British silver. Instead, they devised a cunning system. The company used a portion of the tax revenue they collected from the Indian people to buy Indian goods for free. These goods were then exported back to Britain and other parts of the world. Essentially, Indian producers were paid using their own tax money, and the profits from the sale of these goods went directly into the pockets of the company and its shareholders in Britain. This was the birth of the drain of wealth. The Indian people were effectively buying their own exports, but the proceeds never returned to them. This system marked the beginning of a massive, one-way transfer of resources from India to Britain that would continue for nearly 2 centuries. One of the most devastating consequences of British rule was the deindustrialization of India, particularly its world-famous textile industry. Before the British takeover, Bengal was the global leader in textile production. Fine muslins and calicos from India were prized across the world for their quality and craftsmanship. Indian artisans had perfected their techniques over generations, creating a vibrant and prosperous industry. However, British policies were designed to crush this competition. They imposed high tariffs and duties on Indian textiles being imported into Britain, making them prohibitively expensive for British consumers. Simultaneously, they flooded the Indian market with cheap, machine-made textiles from Britain's own burgeoning factories, which were booming thanks to the Industrial Revolution. This created a completely unfair playing field. The result was catastrophic for Indian artisans. Millions of weavers, spinners, and dyers lost their livelihoods as their craft could no longer compete. A region that once clothed the world was forced into poverty. India was transformed from a major exporter of finished manufactured goods into an importer of them. It was pushed to become a supplier of raw materials, like cotton, to feed the very mills in Manchester that had destroyed its own industry. This process wasn't an accidental byproduct of free trade, it was a deliberate policy. The goal was to reconfigure the Indian economy to serve Britain's industrial needs, ensuring that India remained a dependent colonial market. As the 19th century progressed, the drain of wealth evolved. After the Indian Rebellion of 1857, the British Crown took direct control from the East India Company, but the economic exploitation only intensified and became more sophisticated. A key mechanism for this was the council bill system. Here's how it worked: anyone in Britain who wanted to buy Indian goods could pay for them in London using pounds sterling. They would give their pounds to the India office in London. In return, they received special paper notes called council bills. These bills could then be sent to India and cashed in for rupees from the colonial government's revenues, which were, of course, collected from Indian taxpayers. This meant that Indian exporters were once again paid using their own country's tax money. The pounds sterling that were paid in London never reached India. They stayed in Britain. This money was used by the British government to pay for the salaries and pensions of British officials in India, to fund British military campaigns around the world, and to service the debts of the colonial administration, all billed to the Indian taxpayer. So, while India was running a massive trade surplus with the rest of the world, meaning it was exporting far more than it was importing, it never saw the foreign currency earnings from that surplus. Those earnings were effectively siphoned off in London. This system was a brilliant but devastating piece of financial engineering that allowed Britain to finance its own imperial expansion using India's wealth. The renowned economist Utsa Patnaik is the one who calculated the staggering figure of $45 trillion. She meticulously analyzed nearly 2 centuries of tax and trade data, from 1765 to 1938. Her research accounts for the siphoned-off export surplus earnings, compounded at a modest rate of interest over the centuries. This isn't just about the physical goods taken, it's about the lost potential, the capital that could have been reinvested in India's own development. If those earnings had remained in India, they could have funded education, healthcare, infrastructure, and industrialization, completely altering the country's historical trajectory. The human cost of this economic drain was immense. The destruction of industries and the siphoning of resources left the Indian population incredibly vulnerable. When famines struck, as they did with devastating frequency under British rule, the consequences were horrific. The colonial administration often prioritized exporting grain to Britain over feeding its starving subjects. The Great Bengal Famine of 1770, which occurred shortly after the East India Company took control, saw the death of up to 10 million people. Later famines in the 19th and 20th centuries also claimed millions of lives, exacerbated by policies that had drained the region of its wealth and resilience. By the time the British left in 1947, they left behind a society shattered by centuries of exploitation. A country that once held nearly a quarter of the world's GDP was left with just over 3%. India's industrial base was decimated, and it was plagued by deep-seated poverty. The literacy rate was abysmally low, at just 12%, and life expectancy was a mere 31 years. The thriving economy of the 18th century had been systematically hollowed out, its wealth transferred across the globe to fuel Britain's rise as a global superpower. Understanding this history is not about assigning blame in the present day. It's about recognizing the deep historical roots of global inequality. The wealth of some nations is not a historical accident, it is deeply intertwined with the poverty of others. The prosperity of the West was built, in significant part, on the resources and labor extracted from its colonies. The story of the $45 trillion drain is a powerful reminder of how colonial policies reshaped the world, creating economic patterns that persist to this day. It's a history that has been overlooked for too long, but one that is crucial for understanding the world we live in now. Thank you for joining us on Historical Repo. If you found this exploration enlightening, please consider subscribing to our channel and sharing this video. We believe that understanding our past is the first step toward building a more equitable future.